welcome back to the podcast. I guess this is the first proper in-person episode, although it is like episode 8 of the podcast I've been trying to do for like the last couple of years. But I think we'll just make it a bit more real and raw travel. I've tried some other episodes and I think in person just makes 100% difference, even though we've been messing around for like 30 minutes with the audio stuff. But I think it makes a big difference being in person. It's not your first time actually doing one of these with me.
No.
Although a lot of time has passed since then, a lot of things have changed. So I guess we'll start. George, who are you? How do you know me?
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about yourself. Let's start with that.
Appreciate you having me on, mate. My name is George, as Courtne said. And I run an agency, done over $1 million with the agency model. We live together. We're roommates for now.
For now. Things change very often here, but yeah.
Courtne doesn't actually know where he's going to be in the next few months. But yeah, pretty much that's really all there is to know. I run an agency. We're going to do around 150, 200K this month. So I kind of live in the advertising space, the e-commerce space. Those are specifically the clients that we work with.
But it wasn't all that way. Like if we think back to how long have we known each other? Must be.
So it was the
years?
summer of, I think it was around summer of 2022, if I'm not mistaken.
5 years.
So,
no, 2.5 years. Yeah, 22. Okay.
2.5.
A lot has changed in that.
Yes. Yeah.
You were not always Google Ads for e-com. I remember there being a lot of swapping around in that process.
Yeah. No, I mean, initially a lot changed, but we've managed to stick with this one things for quite a while now. So, yeah.
So, I mean, I know your journey because obviously I've known you for the last 2.5 years, but I think they wouldn't. And I think you've done a lot of things differently than what I have. One thing I've been impressed with, I can say, both as a friend and also just from a work perspective, is you've stuck to one thing.
Yeah.
You rebranded, but fundamentally didn't change much of the company. Whereas, Lord knows, I've zigzagged quite a lot.
Quite a few
email domain addresses. But that's like, I think the first thing that I wanted to touch on is in this space, there's so many changing and so many like different things. Why have you stuck with one thing and sort of what prompted that? Because I've never been able to figure that out.
Yeah. So I think it comes down to personality. I think you and I are fundamentally very different in personality. I'm a big fan of the Myers-Briggs test. I know you're an INTP, if I'm not mistaken. I'm an INTJ.
I have no idea. I should probably know this, but I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the difference between that final variable that is different between us, prospecting and I think it's judging or something of that nature. And that basically is the variable between spontaneity and not spontaneity. I do think you're a much more spontaneous person than me. When you have a good idea, you kind of like get extremely excited about it and you pursue it. I mean, let's look at your location first of all, not just even business. Like this guy's in London, he's in Cape Town, he's in Dubai, he's in Canary Wharf, he's been here in Battersea, where we are now in the southwest. Whereas myself, I'm not a spontaneous person. I don't really like change, which I know these are things that are a bit controversial, but I actually
we'll keep the last couple of weeks between us.
I do just like. I have very good ability to have tunnel vision and have my blinders on. So I think it's actually just fundamentally a personality thing. I like having one business, simple, scalable, just pursuing one thing for as much as I can. So I would say probably that's why.
All just down to personality.
I genuinely think so. Because I think there's two types of entrepreneurs. I think there's the sort of chaotic, spontaneous entrepreneur that sort of has like 3, 4, 5 businesses, has all of these ideas, and most of them fail, but then they have the one idea that changes the world, something like that. And then I think there's the other entrepreneur, kind of like the sort of Sam Ovens style, which is very much just very focused on like one thing, just steadily progresses like year over year over year. I identify more with that second type.
Do you think of yourself as more of an operational person or more of I wouldn't use the word visionary, but creative type?
100% visionary, yeah. I know you've pinned me down as an operator before. I have to say, without tooting my own horn, I think I have enough skill in both because I'm a sole founder of my agency. And when you're running an agency at like a 2 million plus run rate, you have to be good at both. You have to be able to steer the ship and know where you're going, and you have to be able to be good at managing people. But one of the key hires that I made in Q4 was a head of operations. This person is going to become my COO very soon, and that was life changing, like eye opening, changed the business. We've pretty much over doubled since September of 2024 when I brought him on. And that's because it's allowed me to just focus on service/product. That's kind of our product. Obviously, we run an advertising service, vision, offers, marketing, and planning out how we can get to like a 5 million a year run rate, which is really my goal for 2025. Being able to end 2025 at a 5 million a year run rate, and then in 2026 doing 5 mil plus.
We'll get more into like the playbook on how you achieve that, because I think there's a lot of learnings. And I remember there was one specific thing I said you should do, which you delayed for a while, which tilted things. But before we even get to that, I want to just go back to like the operation visionary thing.
Yeah, of course.
I've played around a lot with the word creator. If I was to describe myself, I think more like you used to be entrepreneur. I think now I'm starting to go more the creator standpoint. Maybe it's because I realize I like design and whatever.
Yeah.
And I think when you create something, it's that initial like burst of energy and excitement, and then it sort of becomes not so much a baby, but a much larger organism.
Yeah.
You start getting a bit bored. Whereas I've seen operational people not really can do that like initial spark, but they can sustain it and grow it for much longer. So it's interesting that you say more on the creative side, but then I go back to you just being able to execute operationally quite well. Because I think you and I are in both camps, so like we can run operations.
I mean, you were, when you run Central Site, you were like full ops mode. I saw that, and you're an amazing operator as well. But I guess in the business that you run now, it's brought out a different side of you. You're forced to be the designer. I mean, you design the whole thing yourself.
Yeah.
So,
do you like absolutely hate design, or do you think you have like some?
I must say, my industry doesn't really call for much design.
Yeah, but I mean, there's still like the way you design your Asana dashboards and like this your website, for example. Like
website, yeah, I do like design. I guess I would just maintain that, like, I don't really do too much of it. It's more the visionary side of that kind of archetype. That's where I spend most of my time. Like on the weekends, I love nothing more than like just planning months, years into the future.
Yeah, long sauna sessions.
Yes, right, long sauna sessions.
And what about like the literature side of things? Because you also studied English Lit, and you read like quite classical novels. So a lot of that also leans down to a bit more creative. Have you noticed you doing less of that as time has gone on?
No. So more of it, really. I mean, I grew up writing stories. So I grew up doing creative writing, novels. Like my parents would be able to tell you the amount of like novels and fictional things that I wrote when I was younger. Always excelled in humanities, English, history, politics, philosophy, things like that. And then obviously went on at university in Exeter to do English literature and philosophy, Bachelor of Arts. And I genuinely do not think I could have done a better degree for my line of work, because all I do all day is copywriting, writing newsletters, writing ads, writing scripts, writing important messages to clients and team, inspiring team, plans, vision. Like all I do, I feel, is right. I remember this is something that you said once upon a time, which is like everything just comes down to copywriting.
Yeah.
Like, well, sales is essentially copywriting, language. Yeah, exactly.
Communication, conversation.
Exactly.
It's interesting you say that though, because I think for me, the last 6, 12, 18 months, I've had to do a lot of learnings about myself and what I like. And I realized there's like two types of entrepreneurs. There's the ones who live glamorous lifestyles and are very good at like the Instagram funnel and like all that content side of things. And then I think you get more people who can write and read. And so like for me, I want to do these long form podcasts where it's more just like having a conversation. In the future, Seeking Sigma will be recording this, but whatever, we'll get to that. And then also like writing essays. Like I'm working on a piece now that I'll publish soon, which is very rare in the space. Like I haven't seen a lot of like online people actually write essays. I think it's much more common in the tech world because people are not very Instagrammable and like the whole social media thing is not really going. So you write. And I think if you can bridge the gap between that industry and this one, you get something quite interesting. Coming back to copywriting, not many people are good at it fundamentally. Like I think it's really hard as a skill. at least that I've seen in the internet money space. Would you like agree with that? Like, how many people do you think can actually write? Like, if you ask them, write an essay about whatever, could be a funnel, could be whatever. How many of them do you think would actually be able to do it?
Yeah, it's pretty rare. I actually think the lifestyle is a bit of a crutch for lack of that ability. So if you can't, I mean, like some of the best copywriters in the world, like Dan Kennedy, these guys were not on yachts,
No.
And yet they sold like millions and millions and millions of dollars of stuff without having that lifestyle. Maybe it's not a crutch, maybe it's just a different way of doing things, which is like fair enough, especially in the kind of info marketing course world. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think it's a rare skill to have, but it's extremely important. If you want to excel at whatever you're doing, I think it's useful in any sort of field. And yeah, I think the article stuff is really interesting. Like it's an appreciation for almost like the intellectual sort of scholar side of business, or whatever you're doing. Writing articles on, in your case, like AI, communication, or also raising capital, things like that.
Yeah. A lot of new skills.
It's a very different world to the world that we both kind of came up in.
Yeah.
Like that does not happen in that world. There's no agency articles or anything like that. But it's also something that I'm interested in as well. I would quite like to do a lot more of that kind of formal writing.
I want to chat to you about how you think the markets have been changing, because I've been in the game slightly longer than you, and I've definitely jumped around. And so I've sort of like done almost every business model, from dropshipping to consulting to info to agency to like all of these different things. And I think like the agency space had like a lot of light shined on it in recent time. It became like the new thing. Yeah. I think we're sort of at the end of that arc. I think it's getting a lot more difficult. There's new businesses that are coming up. So I want to chat to you about that. But before we even get into that, I actually have been meaning to ask you, you and I, so we're flatmates.
Yes.
We spend a bit of time together every day. But we run completely different businesses.
Yes.
Very different objectives, very different forms of making money, very different growth patterns. And so how do you find being around me with my business doing all of the things it's doing? Because we do very different things.
Yeah.
I'm interested how that's had an effect on you. Yeah. Like, do you like absolutely get annoyed at like, I'll do like that and then like that and then down relative to like, how does it feel? Because it must be very different, very strange.
Yeah. Well, when we first met, I feel like maybe we should even summarize the story of how we first met. But, I mean, we obviously I met Courtne when I was not a business owner. I was a civilian. Nothing wrong with that, of course. But basically, really was always interested in entrepreneurship. I'd also dabbled in e-commerce. That was kind of my initial background. At the time, I was at university. But yeah, desperate to get into that world. Found you. Through on organic YouTube, right? Content,
YouTube content,
which you are going to start doing more of now. And
I'm on it.
It's an amazing story. Whenever I tell it, it's quite crazy, because at that point, I think I paid you every single dime in my wallet, basically, for his coaching, and obviously everyone looked at me like I was absolutely crazy.
Did they really?
Yes. My parents, some of my friends that I told, they were like, "What are you doing? You can't afford this." I think. I won't say the price, but it wasn't even that much. It was like low four figures, but at that time, that was sort of all the money in the world to me. And then, pretty much started learning from you. At that point, we were running very similar businesses. You were running your agency. I was running my agency. There was huge amounts of overlap, even in the niche that we were operating in.
Yeah, just was different sides of the same coin, basically.
The exact same thing.
Yeah.
And fast forward 2 years, now we're living together, right? It's like very, very full circle, at least for me. And it's cool. But so obviously now you do run a very different business, in answer to your question. I think it's been nothing but valuable to me to get insights from such a different world. Like I've learned a ton about the fundamentals of raising capital from you. Like I had no clue on earth about that whole process before I met you. And I've lived with you as you went from zero funding to some funding, which has been really, really insightful. So I'd say that's one thing. The other thing is the difference in our hiring processes, like the difference between hiring and to some extent the similarity between hiring sort of media buyers, which is my job, and hiring engineers, designers. Like these roles require very different things, very different salaries as well, certainly.
Yeah. Very different burn rates.
His burn rate is much higher than mine. And I would also just say, again, like how you navigate differences in terms of like, the way you make money is very different the way I make money. Like I was just saying downstairs, like, we grow like 20, 30, 40% this month, 50% a month, which is just like a very steady curve. Whereas the way you do it is like, it's like 0, 0, 0, 0, and then like a ton of investment, and then you like burn it all away, and then you like raise again. And it's like this completely different cycle. So it's been nothing but insightful. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I've taken into my own business from what I've learned from you over these last few weeks.
Has it given you any like the grass is greener on the other side?
No, I really like my business.
No, fair.
I have to say I don't envy your position, at least for now, just because you run a much riskier business than I do, even though the payoff is of course way bigger.
Yeah.
But no, I feel like I've got a ways to go in my business before I attempt anything like that, if I even do. But I think, one thing that I've probably taken from what you've done is, I would say, the way that you, train you and motivate your team. You're very ruthless, which is something I actually really admire about you. And although that's not necessarily my personality, I'm much more of a reward, positive reinforcement kind of person in my company. What I have noticed is the way that you make your team compete. Like engineers compete with engineers, media buyers compete with media buyers. I'm now building a sales team, closers compete with closers, setters compete with setters. And I've seen you do that very, very, very well, especially on the engineering side. So I'm taking that into my business at the moment.
I still remember I went away for like 4 or 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And our building has like a co-working space in it. And there's a girl that we always see there. And what exactly was her comment about me or something? That's the first time that I actually became aware of this.
Yeah.
I wish I could say I was doing something masterful, like, getting the team to compete because you get more performance out of them. And like, I'm actually writing an essay now on like high performance because I've realized that I'm quite good at this and I want to sort of distill it down. It's a bit more structured.
Yeah.
So that'll be out soon. But for me, it was very natural. It wasn't like I read a book and like, okay, I'm going to implement a performance system. I'm going to do this and this and this. And I think that comment brought awareness to me oh, this is a skill set I had, but didn't really recognize. And I think the most beautiful skills are the skills that you don't even know you have. It just becomes so natural and ingrained. You just do it.
For context, basically, this girl that we see in the co-working space all the time, I was having a chat with her after I came back from Christmas, and she was like, I hear Courtne on the phone all the time with his like employees, and he's really loud. And I'm like, he's pretty loud. And she was like, he's pretty hard on his employees. And I was like, oh, well, what do you mean? And she's like, well, I always hear him whenever he like talks to his team, he really like pits them up against each other. And I'm like, what's an example of that? And she was like, well, he'll get on the phone and I'll be like, I won't say names. I'll make up the names. She'll be like, he'll be like, so John, I see you've done X, Y, and Z. Harry, why have you not completed as many tasks? And she was like, I don't think I'd want to work for him.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, I had this conversation. I was in Marbella with some friends who also run different businesses, a bit more software focused though. And I was sort of explaining them how I run my engineering team. And for them, this was like, what? Like, I've never heard of this. Like, I think it came from your agency days though. 100%.
Yeah.
For context of people who are like watching this and come from different worlds, I used to run a marketing agency. I ran it for like 2.5 years before exiting it. But I ran a very different business than typical marketing agencies. I had some unique advantages. One, I was in South Africa, so it's cheaper cost of labor. And so it was very much a business, high operations, highly competitive, very, fast to replace people and replace customers. So very, very different. But I think for me, I took all the lessons I learned building a sales team and simply applied it to engineers.
Yeah.
Like in sales, it's very common to have a leaderboard. And it's very common to have, OTE. And if you miss OTE, then you're out, right? It's very common to have these things. And engineers just don't have that, just not used to it. So I made a leaderboard. Yeah. And I was like, well, let's make a leaderboard and then we eliminate the bottom 10% every month. The same concept there applies to others.
Yeah.
And I think I really struggled with it in the beginning because engineers are very different than salespeople. They don't like that. Sales is like, you almost expect that boiler room, Wolf of Wall Street hunger, whereas engineers do not. But I've realized the best ones do. I think I've come to terms with the absolute best talent. They love competing because A team likes A team and they want to know that they're competing and winning, right?
And they also want to be the best.
And they want to be the best.
Yeah.
And what I've come to realize is for some of the best people in the world across all industries, money is actually not a motivator, because if you're the best at anything, whether it be engineering or ads or whatever, like money just naturally comes, right? It's not that hard. But credibility is another enormous thing, which is why I told you titles are cheap, salary is expensive.
Yeah.
And making like that actual game, like why do people work so hard at my companies? It's because they want you are the best on the leaderboard.
Yeah.
And I also think, as I said, it comes very naturally to me. And one of the things that I learned this year, not this year, last year, I think the biggest learning that I learned last year is the most beautiful thing is to know who you are and do the passions that come naturally to you, which was a big change for me, because it obviously changed businesses and different things. And I think now I'm way more aligned with what I'm doing. And coming back to your point, you don't run your business like that, but I think fundamentally we're just different.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not this way is better than that way, because businesses succeed in both, right? There's ruthless and there's more compassionate. I think it just comes down to who you are.
And on that, I think it's so true. There's so much more than just money in a role.
Yeah.
Money and salaries, maybe 60% of it, depending on the industry you're in, 60, 70, 50, or whatever it is. And then the remaining percentage is all about pretty much human nature. So competition, incentivization, again, fear, maybe, like it depends how you run your business.
Yeah.
But I've noticed that hundredfold, whenever I pit two team members against each other, they work harder, and there's been no increase in salary. Whenever I present a role that they can progress into. So recently we hired a head of performance at my agency, head of media buying. And I announced the role a couple months before we promoted for it. And I noticed a huge uplift in performance and in work. I mean, even to the data, more tasks were being done in Asana. Like there was a specific uplift, things like that. So yeah, you have to be able to motivate your team past just money. Because I think there's nothing worse than getting into a role, even if it's high paid and it's just, there's no room for progression. There's no competition. You're just earning a flat salary. You're not going to be able to put your best forward.
Yeah. I also think it's just, when you compete on money, you generally tend to lose. I mean, I compete against OpenAI and like Anthropic now, technically, for engineering talent. It's like, we just cannot equal that salary. There's nothing that I can do to do that. And so there needs to be other reasons to join. And I think one of the ways that you do that is the David versus Goliath story, right? It's like, this is a huge company, lots of money, whatever, but you are number 1,584 and that's about it, right? Where here you can create impact.
You've been very good at that.
I think I'm learning on it.
I mean, recruiting great talent is just like sales. You have to pitch them. You have to handle objections. You have to do all of these things because they could go somewhere else with a much bigger salary. So you have to pitch them. Bad talent, you don't have to pitch. Bad talent or average talent, you just give them the job and they accept it. But great talent, you have to. It's literally like a sales process.
If we talk about, let's call them natural talents, right? What do you think yours are? So, for example, maybe talent, because talents implies skill, and that's not exactly what I'm grasping at, but more just like
attributes, traits,
things that you have affinity to. So I think for me, competition comes very naturally. I love design, and I get really annoyed if things don't look nice. I will choose to use one tool over another simply because it looks nice, even if it's more expensive and all these things. So these are like natural things. I think sales for me as well is a very natural thing. I think I've tried to train a lot of salespeople over time, and I've learned you can teach them the frameworks, like, the bridge, the whole thing. But really, there's some people who can just do it naturally. And I think writing is another one of mine. What do you think some of those, let's call them affinities, are for you?
Well, you stole my top one, which was going to be writing, and copywriting and persuasive writing, because I've been writing all my life, and I think that's why I've been successful, like just being very good at that. And then I would also say I'm very good with people. I would say I have quite a high, I've got plenty of faults, don't get me wrong, but I would say one thing that I am good at is I have quite a high EQ, if you believe that's as a metric, which I think I do. Yeah. I think I have very high EQ. I'm very good at reading people, reading rooms, understanding what people are thinking behind the hood, which is extremely useful when you're managing a team. My team is like 20 people plus now. And growing. So being able to get the best out of people. So I would say those are my two things. It's writing, and it's reading and moving people, which I think is an incredibly important trait as an entrepreneur. Your ability to move people to your cause is like one of the number one things. And I think you do that by getting on the same level as people. I think Elon does this really well. Like he moves the best talent because he fundamentally understands the problems that they're working on. Like Elon probably understands every single corner of the businesses that he runs, and the talent respects that. It's not like he's some removed CEO. He is someone who's very involved on the ground. And I think I run my business in the same way. Like I think I could do any single role in my business tomorrow and do it very well. And that means the media buyers respect me because I know just as much as they do about the media buying. I think the salespeople respect me because I can sell as good, if not better than them. The operations respect me. You know what I mean? So yeah, I would say those two things.
I think it also makes it easy to hire when you can do something yourself because you cannot be bullshitted.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing with the whole agency fad, right? Yeah. Like it's like, the whole, just get into it. Don't learn the skill. Just hire immediately. Outsource. And then
it doesn't exactly work that way.
But as well, and in your game as well, in software, if you can't do design or if you can't do engineering, how?
No, I think software, or SaaS rather, is having a bit of a moment at the moment. I think everyone wants to start a SaaS, and a lot of the time they ask me, what do I need to know? Like, how hard is it? And I say fundamentally, you have to be able to do biz dev, sales, marketing, and you have to do engineering. Yes, there's AI and it's easier to write code, but fundamentally you need to know what's going on.
Yeah.
I think I've been able to iterate very quickly in our product relative to some others. And I think the only reason that's happened is simply because I might not write the code, but I know what's going on and I can review it and write if absolutely required, which means I cannot be bullshitted by engineers and I know what I'm looking for. Yeah. I can see that if someone came in, because I've heard so many friends who try to build like a software and exorbitant cost and timeline for a product that I can see should have been assembled in like a week. So I think that's a very dangerous, treacherous path. If you don't actually know what you're doing, you don't need to be a master. Like the engineers in my team can write code way better than I can, a lot better. And they come up with some things I could never have imagined. But at a high architectural view, I know sort of what's going on. And agency, same thing, right? Like ads, copy, you need to be able to do all of those things, even if people can do it better than you to a certain degree.
Yeah, I think I'm so passionate actually about this idea. Like understanding yourself extremely well and then building something or going into an industry which allows you to play to your strengths, right? So if you look at like the big 5 personality traits, you've got conscientiousness, extroversion/introversion, openness.
Do you think you're an extrovert or introvert?
Massive introvert. Yeah.
Really?
100%. But introversion doesn't mean you don't like talking to people. It means what you like is having really meaningful one-to-one interactions. Like I don't like groups, really. I don't like big group conversations. I go a little bit quiet in those. But I really excel in those kind of deep one-to-one conversations, which is why I think I'm great at leading a team, because I hop on a call with someone and I'm able to ask to have a really good interaction with them. So whereas for you, I think you are extremely conscientious. I think you're extremely disagreeable as well, which is another one. I'm quite agreeable. So I don't like having conflict. I like to get on with people, which is why, knowing that I run my business in a positive, reward-based way. Obviously, some conflict is necessary, of course. I'm good at having that. But whereas you do not take BS. Like you shout at people, you get angry at people. So that's why you're very good at the kind of leaderboard, firing, 3 strikes you're out kind of thing. So it's just knowing yourself and then building something that allows you to stick to those skills.
I wasn't always like that though. Like I think, in the earlier days I tolerated people, screwing up a lot of times and chances. I think what has just changed now is I genuinely believe high performance is like a superpower. And I think you can do a lot more with less people if they're high performers, and finding them is very hard. Yeah. Cultivating it is even harder. Being one yourself is a requirement in order to capture them, which is something I work on. And I also just have the capital resources now to look for them, because if you're a high performer, you deserve to be paid, or you expect to be paid. And I've noticed one A player equals 10, 15 C, D players.
100%.
And so now I think, because I'm also trying to build something different, like I don't think, agency wise, I don't think you need A players in all of the positions. Do you agree with that?
Well, I mean, no, I would disagree with that. Yeah.
Really?
I mean, it depends what you're trying to build. If you're trying to build sort of a 7-figure agency, no. If you're trying to build a 5 million a year agency or a 10 million a year agency, yes.
In every position?
Um,
Because you get C-suite and then you get like your, like if you break down your pods.
I see your point. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to hurt. You know what I mean? Like getting the best people in as many positions as possible is only going to benefit you. But I get your question. Like, do you need that to grow? In that case, I would probably say no. If you have A-star players in the leadership points on the hierarchy, they can actually bring up the B players to perform better and train them and motivate them, which is exactly what I'm leveraging in my company. Like our head of Google Ads is phenomenal. Do you know what I mean? Like he is such an amazing talent. And so as soon as I promoted him, I felt like everyone picked the bar and sort of rose their own game because they now know that he's looking at all the accounts. He's like sort of managing them, etc. So, but I mean, is your point that in software you do need a star in every position? Or
I personally have realized that A players do not like being around people who are not A players. They get frustrated by it.
Yeah.
And so I believe in a multi-tiered approach because I don't think you can have a company of only A players, regardless of the industry.
There's not that many to go around.
Not that many. It becomes cost inefficient. And there are also some things in a business that do not require exceptional talent, right? There's like operational stuff, etc.
Yeah.
And also, if everyone's an A player, you end up with this thing like who's the best always. You need some sort of a class tier structure. I think seeding a company and scaling a company are very different, right? The initial seed needs to be a lot better than, as a company scales out. Because ultimately you just need bodies, right? Sometimes. But I do think that this has been something that I've sort of changed my mind on over time. The last 12 months, I've learned a lot. Like a lot of the skills you alluded to, capital and these things, raising funds, cap table management. I didn't know any of that 12 months ago.
Yeah.
Or even 8 months ago. So I just had to pick it up as I go. And I'm curious what skills you've learned. Because I've learned like completely different things relative to my past, but you've kept constant, but you have changed the business from earlier this year. The numbers were what, like 20K, 40K, I think.
Very small. Yeah.
Somewhere there. Now on track for, I believe, 2 mil run rate.
This year we'll do 2 mil plus 2.5 probably.
Now, because you've stuck in the same vertical, do you think it is an improvement on existing skills, i.e. you've got better at hiring, better at ad management, better at copy, or do you think it's the abstract understanding of completely new skills that have enabled that jump?
It's a great question. And before I answer it, to your credit, like this guy has completely transformed in the last like 8 months. I mean, like it's insane that you basically just like went straight out of the pan and into the fire and just like dove into the deep end and just pushed through a whole lot of pain and suffering basically and just learn all these skills at a rapid pace, at a level of pain that people would be afraid to go through. And your competitors probably learned these things a lot slower than you did because they didn't want to go through what you did in like those few months. Because I know how hard you worked. Don't underplay it.
When you refer to pain, are you just talking about like having no life and sitting at the desk for like 7 days a week?
Basically, yeah. So credit to you. You learned all of those extremely important skills very, very quickly, which is cool. But for me, no, I would definitely say it's the former. Like for agency, it's like you have these few core skills, and then the better you get at them, the further your business grows. I don't think I've learned any drastically new things, other than of course like leadership. Like that is a new thing because like when you have 2-3 employees, it's like there's no leadership there. You just sort of like tell them what to do. You're basically on the same level as them really. But now we have layers in the company. Like we're going to have C-suite soon, but we already have heads of departments and we have seniors and then we have juniors, and that will only continue to grow. So I would say leadership is one fundamentally new skill that I've learned really in the last like 3-4 months, like probably 3 months. Yeah. Like actually good leadership, and getting out the best of people, which we talked about earlier. But other than that, it's really just mastering copywriting, sales, fulfillment, systems, operations, I mean, as you know, there's only like so many parts of an agency. It's like growth, fulfillment, operations. If you can sign X amount of clients per month and your churn is below a certain percentage per month, you will grow. It's such a simple equation to success. It's like how many clients can you sign? What's your net revenue retention / what's your churn? And if those numbers line up, then you grow.
Do you think there's a linear sequential order, or I should say like best fit linear sequential order to learn these skills? Or do you think it's completely dependent on what you bring to the table beforehand? Like, I think people naturally either come to the table with some ability to sell, either based on what they've done in the past or just, natural personality traits. Or do you think there is a 1, 2, 3, 4, learn these skills in this order rather than people just come with different skill sets initially?
Yeah, I think if you do it in the right way, it should be in the order that they go, right? So it should be marketing, and then you do your marketing and you get your first client, and then it becomes fulfillment. Oh, actually, then it becomes sales because you get on the call with them, and then it becomes fulfillment, and then it becomes operations.
What about ideation? Because in order to market, you first need something to market. And ideation, I believe ideation is the same as productization, which is what niche, what service, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Do you not think that comes first?
No, because I actually think in the agency world, in the software world, it's very different. It's like product. You start with the product, bro.
Yeah.
In the agency world, it's like you start with the marketing and you see what you can sell. And then whatever sticks, that's what you build the service around. You actually do not want to form this like super complex service, which an associate of ours in this building tends to do without any service market fit first.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be in a lot of trouble if it doesn't work. And so no, I think in the agency world, what you want to do is you want to have, obviously a hypothesis. You want to go and test that hypothesis and fail quickly. And ideally actually just copy what others are doing, to be honest with you. Great artists steal. And it's actually a red flag. In the software game, it's a good thing if no one's done what you're trying to do before. In the agency world, it's a bad thing because there's way less product market fit. And it makes it's much more of an uphill battle. So no, in answer to your question, I think you start with the marketing, you start with the sales, and then whatever sticks and works, you build up on that.
I find this conversation very interesting because I would have agreed with you 3 months ago. And I think fundamentally it's come down to you get product/intuition-led founders, and then you get market-led founders. And market-led is what does the market want? Find a problem, build a solution, make sure the unit economics are there, scale, etc. Intuition/product-led is start with something the market doesn't even know that they need and or want, and then bring it to the market and transform the market, right? One is, of course, more risky and has a tendency to go wrong, but if you achieve it, you become a market of one, high payoff, right? Yeah. The expected value is high. I think that my ability to continually run a business comes from like my passion for it, which lends to product/ideation. Because if you do what you do, go to the market, figure out what they want, you can end up doing something you just fundamentally don't care about, right? It might make sense and unit economics are there and cash flow is great. But I wonder, how do you think most people would stand up to, I'm making money, it's doing well, but I fundamentally hate what I'm doing?
Well, I think this goes back to a conversation we had in this very apartment a few weeks ago, maybe, which is the different types of founders. It's like the founder that wants to change the world. Yeah. And that's what they want to do. And they want to do what they love and change the world. And the founder that maybe that doesn't necessarily want to do that. They want to change the lives around them, change their life, change the lives around them, take care of their people. And that's what's most important to them. They don't really want to go out there and change the world. They don't have an interest in that. I very much affiliate with market-led founder and very much affiliate with that second type of founder that isn't necessarily out here to change the way the entire world works, but is more here to change the lives of their team, employees, family, friends. And I guess that's just a fundamental difference. And I mean, it's like, for example, Uber is like, that was a product first idea. Yeah. Everyone was like, what the hell are you talking about? Whereas I don't feel that the pull to build those kind of businesses. I like market-led businesses. I like businesses that I can see work. And I know that I could do slightly better on, like I could do them like 10% better. So I'll go and do them and win a high likelihood of success.
Yeah. It's very interesting though, because I don't think I've made up my mind on this because I've changed, right? Like that is exactly the philosophy that I subscribe to. And I think now it's changed. I think part of it is different social circles, right? Like the ability to jump between people who are very like on the money focused versus like, we want to change the world. And products, I think that's a very difficult thing.
And as well, if you want to attract the best talent, they want those like world-changing ideas to come and work on. You can't be like me, bro.
Well, that's actually something I was going to touch on. So you made an earlier comment and you said one of the skill sets that you've enjoyed the most, or at least focused on, is getting people excited to want to work with you, right? And leading it. I read a essay, I think it was like maybe the CTO of one of Elon's companies or someone very intelligent wrote it. And they basically were analyzing like what Elon has done historically and sort of the outlier, how it's created an outlier effect from the others. One of the things that they highlighted is if you look at every single one of his companies, in some shape or form, they all promise to change the world.
Yeah.
SpaceX is going to, get us multiplanetary, Tesla, like the electricity thing, like all of these companies. And they were making the argument that the thing that he has done well is somehow create a concept which changes the world, which then attracts bright minds at a discounted rate. Because again, it's idea over market, so you can usually get it at discount. And if you take ideation that can attract investors and top talent, you discount the talent, and the ideation has a large enough TAM to justify high investment and high valuation, you end up with almost like a vortex effect that creates this exponential graph if you can get past that 0 to 1 day, and that's just pure execution. And so in that case, it's very easy to motivate talent. But if you do the market led, it's not that hard. And I found this very hard. I was in Silicon Valley speaking to probably one of the brightest engineers that I know. And I was trying to recruit him. And he straight up said, helping sales just doesn't sound fun. We might make tons of money. Granted, he already had made loads of money, so I don't think he cared. But that was his big objection. I think that was a tilting point for me personally. Yeah. Because I realized I need this guy. He's like one of the best engineers I know. He's ex-Google and Snapchat, so I cannot offer him money because he already's got a ton of that. And his main objection was, I love the company, I love working with you, all these things, but like I just don't want to touch the sales world. And I was like, okay, I need to change. And then now we've changed quite a lot. That was a big insight. How have you found motivating people, or how do you motivate people if it's fundamentally just we're here to make cash?
Different industries, man. Like I'm in advertising. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm in advertising, I'm in e-commerce. I'm more in advertising than e-commerce. Actually, that's a real change that I've had. As much as I find e-commerce interesting, I really see it as just a niche. I'm not particularly romantic about it. It could change tomorrow and I wouldn't care. I just know that I love the agency model. I know I love advertising. So yeah, I'm in advertising, and in advertising, it's very money driven. It's very people driven. And culture driven as well. So if I can sit here and I can say, you're going to come work with us, you're going to make more money than you could in the majority of other positions, and in the positions that you might make more money than you would here, you're going to be bored out of your mind because those are extremely corporate and have terrible culture. So with us, you're going to get top, 10% earnings. Maybe not top 5% earnings, but you will get an amazing culture that is remote first, that is extremely fun, I've built a very young team as well. So everyone's on the same wavelength there, and so that's all I need, man, in my world.
So let's touch on your world a bit, right? So you've been in the agency game. I mean, you've known me 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
So let's call it 2.5 years. You've been sort of in the agency space. The market has changed a lot. In terms of services, niche, etc. If you were to give me like a rundown of what it was then and what it is now, and how you've observed change occur, I think it'll be quite interesting.
That's a very interesting question. What it was then and what it is now. So,
because I feel like different figureheads who are like the leaders have come and gone.
Yeah,
niches have come and gone. So services.
Yeah, I think in a lot of industries you get, well, definitely not in yours, but maybe in SaaS actually. Yeah, there's hype, right? Like there's this wave of hype. So when I was joining, there was this wave of hype in the agency world. Now it's moved on to SaaS, it's moved on to communities, it's moved on to crypto, like whatever. But when I was joining, there was this wave of hype, and so there was this influx of like beginners and bedroom entrepreneurs into my industry, and I was one of them when I first started. And now that hype has died down, and there's less competition, but the game is a much higher level now. It's a much higher stake, I think, because the only agencies that are really left anymore are the very serious ones. So,
do you think it is harder to start one now than it was 2.5 years ago?
Yes.
You make the argument for both, right?
Yeah, in some respects, yes. In some respects, no. Like earlier, when it first started, yes, there was a lot more people doing it, but there was that hype, that momentum was there, and it was easy to jump in. Yeah. It was easy to learn from other people. Everyone was doing it. You had this like huge community of people doing it. You had certain figureheads leading the way that are not leading the way anymore. But now I would say there's less competition. But again, like I would hate to be starting out right now. I think that would be really, really tough.
Why?
Because, well, I don't think there's any restrictions on, a really good like market positioned agency coming onto the scene. For example, your like white label agency idea, I think that would crush right now.
Yeah.
Or the AI costing.
One of my many ideas.
Or the AI costing agency, I think that would crush right now. Like there's no barrier to, there's no, I wouldn't say there's necessarily a barrier to those kind of agencies coming in, but there is a huge amount of saturation to the types of agencies that people were starting when I first got started. Like the e-commerce agency, the market is sophisticated. E-commerce brands are not going to trust a bedroom entrepreneur with their marketing. It's very, very difficult to get that to work. Same with information and coaching companies. Those markets are just sophisticated. So I think, yes, agency works fantastically well, but you do need to find new niches that have not been, that are blue oceans, which was the same back when we started, or I started, I guess. But
I remember there was a very big phase of like local business agencies.
Yes.
That was like a big thing.
Yes.
Everyone was a real estate agency. From what I understand. And, when I was running my agency, which is like 5-6 years ago now, it's quite a while ago, there was a lot less people doing it. I think the market was a lot less unsophisticated. And I also think market conditions were better. We didn't have all the tracking issues, etc. Ads were cheaper. And I think everyone scaled in ecom. Like that was the main niche, including my own. And then it sort of hit that tipping point, and then sort of the local business with a new wave of influencers sort of took over. And I think now we've sort of come down to like practically which niches unit economically make sense. And it will always be your ecom.
Well, then it was AI, right?
AI
then it was automation.
That's when I got out the space.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, that's interesting. So another thing that I want to chat to you about in debate, because I know we have very different views on this, is you said, the bedroom entrepreneur and the remote first. If I look at my career, fundamentally, I've traveled around a lot, a bit more than you, and I've been very remote. But I've also had offices. Like when my agency was at its best, we had offices. I refused to hire anyone who couldn't sit in the office, 6-7 days a week. And it was this concept of arrive and leave when it's finished, not the 9 to 5. Yeah, very different. I am unsure I would have been able to build what I had built back then if it was not in an office. And now, even though we are remote currently, I'm leaving on Monday to Silicon Valley specifically to push I want an office, I want in person. And I've tried to convince you on this several times, and I don't think I've made the biggest dent. And I'd love to sort of hear your argument for why you think remote trumps in person, aside from just cost efficiency, because I know one of them is like talent.
I think it's you have access to a worldwide pool of people. You're not constrained to your area that you're operating in. So the UK, South Africa, etc. So you get cost efficiency is one aspect, but also you just get a bigger pick, right? You get 100 people to pick from instead of 10, right? So you have a higher likelihood of landing great talent. And I also think with the way that I run my business, like remote work's great. If you're running your business and you're fucking doing leaderboards and you're doing like 3 strikes you're out and you're doing this kind of ruthless style, like having an office is great because you can walk over there, look over their shoulder and be like, mate, what are you doing right now? Where are the tasks? Are they done? Whereas for me, that's not how I run my business. I run my business through incentivization, promotions, raises, bonuses, salary increases, things like that. Progression, and there's no reason you can't do that remotely.
What about like communication drag as a bottleneck? Because like one of the things,
I'm a big believer in async communication. Async communication is great.
But all of your talent is the same time zone as you, more or less, right?
No, not anymore. No, we've got a person in the US, we've got a person in Mexico. Like we're actually starting to expand into a lot of different time zones. Which, yes, fair enough. That's a bit of a bottleneck there. Yeah. But I just think async tools are getting better and better, like Huddles, Loom, things of this nature. And I personally don't see why, my thesis is basically I'm going to continue to scale until I can't. And that's been working very, very well. So, I'm going to continue to scale until things break or until profit margins, sink. And I'm going to do that remotely. So
if we were to extrapolate the next 6, 12, 18 months, if you continue on the path that you're going, and I'm sure you'll succeed and be successful with it, at some point, some things will break.
Yeah.
If you were to guess what those things would be, what do you think is going to break first?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I do like doing failure planning, so I do think about this quite a lot. Yeah, I think it would just have to be like, already there are growing pains, right? We're growing 50% this month. So things are slipping through the cracks. Sales is not handing off to fulfillment in the right way. There's not enough communication going from sales to fulfillment, which means onboarding is
because you don't have a Sigma.
You don't have a Sigma, don't have an office. So that's an issue. And so we're making mistakes, but to me, I just see these as like teething pains, like adjusting to the altitude. I know we're going to make mistakes. It's fine. We're going to take those mistakes on the chin. We're going to fix those problems and we're going to move on. So I would say, in answer to your question, the biggest problems that we'll probably face is those kinds of communication issues, which, yes, probably would be solved, improved by having an office. So that's the pro of an office. The con of an office is expensive talent, expensive rent, and restriction of choice as well. So it's like there's pros and cons.
When you say restriction of choice of talent, are you saying simply because if you hire remotely, you can sort of hire in all locations? Mm-hmm. Because one of the things that I became aware of recently is that most companies have a relocation stipend. So basically they still recruit globally and then they just relocate and they'll spend, it's actually not even that much. Like a lot of the, like your fan companies do this, right? Your fan companies, sort of look for talent anywhere and then they bring them to the office and they give them like 6, 7, 8K US for relocation costs. And they obviously do the visa and the whole thing. And that seems to have worked quite well for them. So I don't think that is much of an argument that people make it out to be, because time and time again, I have this conversation. It's always like, I want to hire the best. And in order to do the best, it has to be global. But I don't think that if you have the correct brand, and I think this is the other thing, is it's one thing to find someone and pay for them to move. It's another thing to get them to uproot their entire life.
Yeah.
And I think if you're Facebook, Amazon, whatever, this is easier.
This is easier.
This is a lot easier.
Yeah.
So I think that's like a caveat, but I think you're going to see that become less of a problem. My thesis on this is I think companies will become more efficient soon. I think AI is there as well. And I think this whole thing of like async remote work will be replaced with AI. All of the things that people get cost efficiency from cheap talent, I think AI will replace.
Yeah.
And I think you will be left with, say, a company of 30 will be a company of 5 plus AI. And that 5 is your A players. And I think that 5 has to be in person. And they need to be on the page because AI will close all the other gaps.
Yeah,
I believe that's the thesis for what I think business is going to be.
You've got like Slack AI, for example, which can do a lot of the async things for you.
There we go.
So in different time zones, someone can wake up, Slack AI, they're all caught up, right? I'm open to that idea. Yeah, I'm not against having an office. I just don't think we need one right now.
No.
I think we can scale to 400K a month without an office. Like, I really do think that.
I don't disagree. I think also just depends what you're trying to do business-wise, right? I just think if I say, unlimited cash, unlimited funding, what is the utopian view of what I think work will become?
Yeah.
And I think it will be centralized offices with minimal people, but excellent people. And then AI closing roles. I had a conversation with someone the other day. I don't know why, but people tend to ask me like, is AI going to replace my job? It's a weird question to ask. And I said, I think there has never been a better time to be alive. I think there's more opportunity than ever. I think there's more capital than ever. And I think people will continue to make more than ever. But the bar for excellence is rising.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people today fundamentally who just push paper.
Yeah.
That's like what they do. And they get paid to do that.
Yeah.
And I think the days of that is slowly drawing to an end. And I think remote has led very much to that, because if you need those type of people, you give them a task list with some good SOPs and they execute and you want cost efficiency. I think this will be wiped out. And then the only thing you are left with is high communication throughput, because one of the things I believe is AI is very good when prompted. When unprompted, it gets lost. And in order to create a good prompt requires core understanding of what you were doing, strategic alignment, all these things. And I just find it's very hard to do remotely.
Yeah, that's why you're good with, you said earlier, like you plus AI and good prompts is a very good engineer. Because you have the understanding of engineering at a fundamental level, so you can prompt AI in the right way. And that's what we're trying to do. I think that's what we will try to do in the next 2-3 years, is like be at the forefront of building AI agents, AI automation for advertising as much as we can. And I think we'll be able to do that because we really know what we're talking about. But I agree. Like, I think in 2 years, my company, if we're able to adapt, will be a lot smaller in terms of headcount, and it will have a lot more AI in it. Whether we'll be doing Google, whether we'll be doing Perplexity ads, whether we'll be doing... I disagree with you in the fact that I think advertising will forever exist. Forever exist. I know you have your skepticism about that.
Yeah.
But I think like humans fundamentally need product to improve their lives. How do you conjoin product to human advertising? So I think it will forever exist. I just think it will change, and I will adapt with it.
I just think it's not that I don't think advertising will be around. It's just I've been privileged enough to speak to and be in some of the rooms of what I call change makers, people who are leading a lot of the industries that you take for granted every day, the tools that you use. And I know that there's a very strong disdain for advertising. They just do not like it. And I think if you're a change maker and you've sort of achieved, basic survival needs, cost, housing, like you're sort of done there, and you just want to make a difference, you're going to go for things that you hate. And a good example of this is like X. One of the first things Elon did is make it like difficult for advertisers and removed a lot of things there.
Yeah, but he's encouraging advertisers back as fast as possible now.
I think there's some unit economics that come into play, but I just think we will have a very different internet soon, which is maybe a difference between us. But actually, you touched on something I also want to touch on, which is the whole like AI thing. Like, let's have the AI conversation, right? What are we doing on a podcast in 2025 if we're not talking about AI? So I think you and I sit in different positions here. With the business that I'm running, advancements in AI is like the tide that lifts my business. Every time a new AI advancement happens, that's great for me, right? My entire industry is run on the hype, and I do believe overhype of AI valuations. So anything AI related is great for me, right? Yeah. I see news headlines on this is amazing, advancements, it's just rising. Whereas you run a business that AI is a genuine threat. And I think you feel that because I've often heard you tell me, really worried about AI, all these things. I want you to sort of tell me, why are you worried about it? What do you think it will change? And what do you think like the future of that space will be?
Yeah, I wouldn't say worried. I would just say like, I think if we do not change, we will get wiped out, obviously. I think that's very obvious.
Yes.
But I think if we can develop it and be on the forefront of it and adapt with it, then I think we'll thrive because of my thesis that advertising will exist at least for a very long time. Why am I concerned? Because right now what we sell is, I sell people's time, but what those people do is media buying. So those people basically we specialize in Google ads, Google YouTube ads, and they basically go in to an e-commerce brand's ad account and they move around numbers, right? So they push budgets up, they push budgets down, they change certain bid adjustments, they change certain targeting. And of course, if AI becomes sophisticated enough and actually people trust AI to manage that for them, which I think will also take a bit of time, then it will be replaced. But I think what can't be replaced is the proper oversight of that AI and the prompting of it from people who do fundamentally understand advertising. So just in the way that you said we will have revenue teams instead of sales teams, I think we'll have advertising teams instead of media buyers, whatever that looks like, right? Where there's 1, 2, 3 people, whatever, that sit in the top seat and they control those AI agents or whatever is operating in the ad account. Because brands don't have the high level of advertising marketing knowledge that they need. I mean, if you look at fundamentally why a brand would hire a marketing agency, it's not because they're really good at media buying and pushing around numbers. It's because they have a better understanding of marketing than they do in a lot of cases. So, if you look at the high level, why does KFC hire Ogilvy, right? It's not because KFC can't get great media buyers. It's because KFC doesn't know how to market as well as Ogilvy does. So I guess that's one thing. And second thing as well is we'll just look to expand to, we'll be probably a little bit more, I wouldn't say full service because I do want to stay in the search world for as long as possible, but we'll do things like more creative. So there'll be more weight on copywriting. There'll be more weight on video production, high quality video production for something like YouTube or Perplexity Video or whatever's next, And so just becoming, instead of just being a very highly specialized vendor, button pushing vendor, will become more of a broader, agency that can manipulate these key things using AI. I think that's what will happen.
Are you excited for the future, or are you pessimistic?
I do. I have to say, I'd be lying if I said I wish I wasn't in this position like 2-3 years ago. I think that would be very nice. If I was in like 2021, 2022, at the revenue levels I am now, I would be a very, very wealthy person by this point, because I know that I would just be able to scale and have to change nothing. I know, unfortunately, that I will have, well, not necessarily unfortunately, but I just know that I will have to change a lot about the way my business operates if we want to survive in the next 2-3 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited. I think, as you say, there's no real risk for people that have great skills. And I think I'm fortunate enough to be able to have developed great skills from the business that I've run. So
I think there has never been a better time to be alive.
I would say that too.
I think there's so much opportunity in the world now. So many really, really, really new industries and verticals that are just untouched and undocumented that are coming up.
Yeah.
And I don't generally think that this is society's feeling at the moment. You speak to people, everything's like going badly, but fundamentally, we have less wars than we've ever had. There's more capital than ever. There's more skill set than ever. More opportunity than ever. So many ideas, so many industries.
But for the top percent, right? That's only
when you say
true
top
for the
percent,
top percent.
what are you referring to? Because it's not like top percent in terms of money or capital, unless you disagree.
Well, as you say, the bar is rising, right? I think the bar is rising more and more every year because companies don't need paper pushers. They need extremely effective individuals. And I think the general populace is getting stupider, more distracted, unhealthier every single year as the years go by. Because like, maybe it's a stereotype in your mind, but like at the end of the day, TikTok is shortening attention spans. Food is making people unhealthier. There's a lot of things in the modern world. There's a lot of access in the modern world to these things that slow people down. And 95% plus of the population is seriously falling victim to these things. So they're not able to operate at a level where there is more opportunity, in my opinion.
Do you not think that is like quite beautiful in a certain way? Because I think, I do agree with you. I think both of us, but me specifically, I think I am in a little bit of a bubble because like I don't use a lot of these platforms, right? I'm not sort of exposed to that. And then even worse, because I sit in that tech world, I see things coming before they're going to be released, generally speaking, which sort of, you have to be an optimist to be in that space, right? Because you're creating new shit every day.
Yeah.
And I do think there are a lot of people who will be hit by this wave quite hard, and that might suck for a while. But I genuinely think it will eventually force people to change. Pain is one of the best, stimulants for change. And I think that would make us better generally as a species. It might suck in the short term, but I think it is long term a very good and beautiful thing, unless you disagree.
No, I'd say that's probably true. I think it's hard to say, but yeah, I think at least in the short term, I can't speak about the long term, but at least in the short term, I do think that, we were saying this the other day, like there's certain tools out there that are, yes, distracting for most of the population, but actually making it easier for people like us that are, not distracted, focused.
Yeah. When you say people are distracted, right, you talk about like the content consumption / creation, right? Thank you. You often think of a lot of people just consuming content all day. I actually think that's quite interesting for a couple of things that we've sort of touched on in this conversation. And now we'll sort of get into probably what people want, which is a bit more tactical stuff. Yours is unique because we talk about AI. And I fundamentally believe AI is very good at process. Anything process driven, it's very good at, which is why I think Media Byte will touch, operations, things like that. I think it's very good at. I think creative is actually really bad. And I think everyone thinks of AI as the ability to write and make images and all these stuff, but I don't actually think that is what it will touch first, fundamentally. Almost all agents that are being developed are not creative first, they're process first currently. Like if you actually look at what's implemented in production. So you have this wave of AI. If you subscribe to my thesis, I think it will touch creative last. Then you have a group of people consuming more content than ever. And because they're consuming more, they're creating less. And then you have this change of industry. The reason I connect all those dots with you is because now it's different. The thing that fundamentally allowed your agency to break through that competition was fundamentally content initially.
Yeah.
And if you layer all those things together and you connect the dots, it's like, well, AI is coming, but it will touch this content thing last. Less people are able to create content than ever, which makes it more valuable than ever, but there are more people consuming it than ever and being influenced by ever. So the people who can sort of touch on that generally have outlier status. And again, to do that comes with copywriting, right? Yeah. And so would you agree, without the ability to create content, you would not be where you are today?
Yep, absolutely.
And do you agree, moving forward, that's probably one of the best skill sets to have, the ability to talk and write and create?
100%.
Okay. So now you've obviously succeeded with that. For the people who are listening and, maybe they were trying cold email or whatever the latest fad
is.
Weird
hearing you talk about that again, bro. It's been a long time since you've said that.
It's been a while since I've run cold email teams. Yeah. What would you say is like some of the biggest lessons you've learned about content? Like, give us the tips and tricks.
Oh, okay. what is the biggest thing I've learned about producing content? So yeah, I mean, like, just
let's start with the platforms, right? That you
sure.
dominate,
Yeah, I was going to say
that's different.
Bit of context. Yeah. So I mean, like, we scaled to a 7-figure level, 85K a month, with pure organic content, right? So primarily on X, LinkedIn, which the reason why I think those, and YouTube, but the reason why I think those primary two platforms have come first, and I think you'll agree with me here, is because the highest value people are on them. The smartest people, the richest people are on them. And, we're selling to we're B2B. So we're selling to people that have money. If you're B2C, actually, you're probably going to find most of your successes on a platform like Instagram or TikTok, or definitely YouTube as well. But if you're B2B, you want to go on platforms like X or LinkedIn, where smart business owners go to learn. So yeah, in terms of creating content, I think it comes down to having a few core ideas. Like, if you look at anyone who's extremely successful with content, they have like a sort of groundbreaking thesis, controversial thesis. So I don't know, J.K. Molina, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's a big guy on Twitter.
Yes, I do. He runs a Twitter company, right?
So his tagline is "Likes ain't cash."
Yeah,
You've probably heard that. I think a lot of people have.
It's a Twitter info thing.
Yeah. But I think he's great, and at what he does, he's a great marketer. And I think the reason he's been so successful is because he has this one key thesis, which he keeps coming back to. And there's a real fallacy that people think about. They think people are getting bored of their ideas, but in reality, they don't even know about your idea. Really, you haven't said it enough. So you actually need to get to the point where you think your audience are probably sick and tired of hearing you repeating your thesis before they even realize what it is. J.K. Molina has been talking about Likes ain't cash for 3 years, maybe 4 years, 2, 3, something like that. And it's so powerful because he shapes all of his content around it. It all goes back to that central thesis, which is, likes ain't cash, i.e. it's not about the likes or the views you get. It's about the clients or the money that you create through your content. And so for me, I have my theses in the advertising space that are controversial. 2, 3, 4 core ideas that I've come back to constantly. I think for you, you also have those controversial ideas, right? Because if you jump on these platforms and you just say what everyone else is already thinking, you're not going to find any success, right? I think Alex Hormozy is someone that everyone will be familiar with listening. He's very controversial with his ideas, very controversial. Friendship is transactional. That's one thing that he says. What else? I mean, there's a few different things that he says that people get really, really annoyed at. But he's fundamentally changed the at least the content sphere with business.
So I agree with you. I think the caveat is, in order to write and repeat a thesis that makes sense, there are some prerequisites. First, the ability to articulate it, because that's hard. That's taken for granted, but that's another thing.
Yeah.
Second is the ability to ideate and be original, because, as you said, if you just repeat what everyone else says, you won't get anywhere. And ideation is hard because what I realized, ideation is simply just a second order consequence of confidence, because you need to be confident in I know better or I can do something new. And then you just need to think, all right, apply your other skills and then be able to write it, right? Yeah. And then translate it and express it clearly, because most people also, the amount of people that I've realized, they spend a lot of time talking, but they don't actually say anything.
Signal versus noise. Yeah.
Right. So what would you recommend to people to figure out those two things first? Because we come back to basically the content pillar thing, right? Have your content pillar, have your core thesis, map all the other content to it, right? That's what you're touching on.
Yeah.
But first you must know your thesis and your pillars.
Yeah.
So how would you arrive at knowing those things?
So I think this is one of the things that I've learned from you, actually. It's fundamentally your business stands on some kind of thesis, some kind of theory. It literally has to. It doesn't necessarily have to be completely unique, but my business stands on the idea that Google ads are an important part of the marketing funnel, for example. And then extenuating on from that, not if brands are running them, your marketing funnel is not complete if you do not have paid search, et cetera, et cetera. I won't go into the details because it's very niche specific, but it's like Asana. Asana stands on its thesis of make work simple, right? ClickUp stands on its thesis of make work not simple. Have everything in one place.
I think they just go for cost efficiency, plain and simple.
Well, if that is their thesis, actually. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so you don't have a business if you don't have a theory, because your business is almost like an argument. Like, I think your business is like a sales argument in a way. Why should someone buy your thing, right? If you can't answer that question, you don't really have much of a business. So, so it's important to write that down on a piece of paper before starting any kind of new project or offer or business, getting clear on who you're selling to and why you're selling it to them. And then I think once you write that down as clearly as you can and as much as you can, then all your content really springs from that. It's one of the first things that I do whenever I'm launching a new offer. And it's one of the first things that I did when I started my agency. It's like on my website, you can click read the document, and it's what I go through in my main VSL video. And it's like literally just a sales argument. It's like, okay, if you are an e-commerce brand owner, you are losing money in one of two ways.
Is this like based on some of the SFA work that I did?
Yes.
Like the core thesis?
Yeah, it's evolved since then, but it was 100%. But it's like, if you're an e-commerce brand owner, you're losing money in one of two ways. You're either not running Google ads, or you are and you're doing it wrong. And that applies to 99% of my market. So when they watch that, they're like, oh, okay, well, clearly I need to talk to this person. So I would say that comes first.
All right. So we were to like translate this down to like actionable items. Would you, let's play devil's advocate, right? Tell me if you agree with these things. Mm-hmm. One, understand who you're selling to, because then you choose platform. Mm-hmm. Two, write a thesis and find a correct format to do so. You do not need to be original, but you do need to be structured, I think. Mm-hmm. Third, cut the thesis down by 80%.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
Just make it simpler. Because the first time you write, everything is longer. I've got more into writing recently, and I've realized most books you read were like 10 times longer on the first draft.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Then they get cut down. Like an editor's role. All they do is eliminate words.
Yeah. I think it goes customer, service, and then from the customer and service is naturally born a thesis or a theory. Okay. And then from the theory comes advertising, content, outbound, or whatever marketing. So from the theory comes marketing. Now, you obviously, I guess, okay, maybe you can argue theory comes first and then you get customer and service. But I do think customer comes first because I'm a market-led entrepreneur. So I think you find a customer and you find their pain point and then you sell that. And we are talking about agency here. And I do think that's what you do for agency to get the highest success rate. So I think you find a customer, you find something that their pain point, and you find other people that are selling it effectively too. And then once you have those two things, then naturally you're going to start to form a theory. Ideally, you're going to form a theory that differentiates you from other agencies as well. So maybe you're a Facebook ads agency that focuses your creative first. You're not media buying first, you're creative first. For us, it's like we are copywriting first when it comes to Google. We think that's really underrated compared to the media buying side of it. So, and then from that theory, you get your marketing and you get your sales.
And after that step process, the next thing comes down to like execution, right? When to post, how much to post, what types of posts to make, auto plugs, all these things, correct?
Yeah.
Right. Now, don't you not find that exceptionally interesting? Because 99% of the marketing that I see in terms of how to acquire customers or clients is all focused on that. This is the latest tactic. This is the sequence that you need. Almost none of it focuses on everything else we discussed.
Yeah.
And that fundamentally is why I think people struggle with acquisition that much, is because they just deal with that part. And really, would you agree that that's the 20%? The other 80% is everything else?
100%.
So I find that very interesting. And it comes down to, it's easier to sell flashy shit.
It's a shiny object. Yeah. It's easier to sell a
new cold email sequence,
$997 pack of content, for 2025. It's easier. It's not easy to sell a $997 course on how to build a fundamental thesis of your business. It's not going to sell. It just comes down to human nature.
Yeah.
So
we've touched on 80%. I think it would be an absolute shame to not touch on the 20%, because I think you've learnt and mastered a lot for both X and LinkedIn. So I won't spend too much time on it, but if you were to just say tangible execution, if someone wants to grow on X, what should they do? From setting up profile to frequency and type of content to hidden tactics. What is an auto plug? How does it work? Giveaways, etc.
3 core types of content. You've got authority content, aspirational content, and results/case studies. Those are the 3 types of content you need to post. You can post 1 of those a day. You can post 2 of those a day for a total of 3 or 6 or more. It doesn't really matter how many times a day you post. I would just recommend doing 1 of those a day. So for me, I start off the day with an authoritative post talking about my thesis or my service. That's the one that might not get the most likes, but it will get the highest quality eyeballs and it will get you clients. So if you come out here, Courtne, and you post a authority post on, why you need to, I don't know, something about the future of communication, something like that. Your company needs Seeking Sigma because of XYZ. That is an authority post. You're posting that from the authority that you have. And even if you're just starting out, you should have gotten to the point where you've learned the service like the back of your hand. So again, I think it's a confidence thing. Don't feel as if you do not have authority. If you've spent the time learning your thing, which you should have, because it goes back to doing the thing, not outsourcing the thing, then you do have authority to speak on it because you know more about it than everyone else. So authority, and then aspirational. This is just something that the algorithms really like at the moment. So posting something that's aspirational. So you, Courtne, could go on and you could say, I raised X amount of capital in 3 months. You can do it too, something of that nature, because that people like that. This is specifically on X. Or something to that effect. Also, asking questions is really good as well, because the way that all of these algorithms work is based on engagement. So what it's going to do is it's going to show your posts to your followers first, and then based on the effect that it has on your followers, it's then going to spread it to people who've not seen your content. So you actually need to be writing for your followers, I think. So there's that. And then finally, of course, if we're here to make money and we're here to sign clients, then we need to show case studies, results, things like that. So you would show a picture of someone making money with Seeking Sigma, right?
Yeah.
Closing deals.
Just for everyone who might be watching this who has no idea what that is Seeking Sigma is a software company that I'm running. I have absolutely nothing to sell you. I don't do consulting courses anymore. So for the first time, sign up for it if you want. Don't if you don't. But just for context. But yeah, continue.
Yeah. I absolutely have something to sell if you are an e-com brand owner watching that.
I mean, we have like a running joke that if everything goes to shit, I do at least have some good screenshots to go back to selling courses.
Yeah, I think you'll do very well.
Continue.
So those are the 3 types of posts that I would recommend on X, and then really LinkedIn. LinkedIn does well with 1 post a day, I find. That seems to be what works really well. So I would say just... actually, what I recommend is we haven't talked about newsletters. I actually think personally what I do every day is I start with the newsletter. So I start with one central idea for the day.
Does an email go out every day to your list?
Yes,
entire
5
list,
days a week.
No segmentation?
There's segmentation, sometimes.
But the email goes out to everyone, or is it?
More or less, most days, everyone,
5 days a week?
Yeah.
You haven't seen drops in deliverability?
No.
Okay. And what is the average growth rate on a daily basis of that? Because you're also running ads and you're doing other things.
Yeah, it's probably we get 20, 30 subscribers a day, something like that.
Okay. And have you ever, do you know what your unsubscription rate is?
No, I actually don't. I'm not a huge newsletter person. I don't really see what I do as like running a newsletter. It's not like a morning brief or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's literally just writing an email to send to my list. That's really all it is. I don't care about the unsubscription rate.
Yeah. The reason I ask is a lot of people would be concerned if I'm sending an email every single day, people are going to get bored, people are going to get annoyed, they're going to unsubscribe, etc.
No, I don't think so at all. I think you have, if you're selling something, you literally have, it's your duty to weed out the people that are not going to buy by sending them an email every day and then forcing the people that are going to buy, right? Yeah. In a way. So anyway, that's what I do. I start with a central idea, which of course comes from my core thesis. And then that newsletter springs into the X posts and it springs into the LinkedIn post. Usually the LinkedIn is pretty much just a rewrite of the newsletter, more or less, because it's the same kind of style of copy on LinkedIn. It's very long form, not video based, text based. So very similar to a newsletter, whereas the X will be kind of excerpt from the newsletter.
So the process is write a newsletter, which is, would it be fair to say a thesis is quite a long structured doc. So if you take out each section and turn that into a essential newsletter on a daily basis, almost like you pick and choose.
Yeah.
Write a thesis.
And people repeat this. I don't know if you've seen this, but people repeat the same ideas again and again and again. You don't have to keep coming up with new ideas because, as I stress, your audience really, really does not you overestimate how much your audience listens. They've got a lot of noise going on. So, you may think that you're the only one in their inbox, but you're not. So you can repeat the same ideas again and again, but just having 5 to 10 central ideas and repeating those.
All right. So 5 to 10 central ideas, form a thesis. You pick one basically daily. And this is an abstract simplification, but pick one, write a newsletter Monday through Friday. That's what goes out. Basically, a shortened, simplified version of the newsletter becomes your LinkedIn post. X, frequency of posts doesn't seem to be an issue with deliverability, et cetera. So you can post many, many times. You have those 3 buckets that you bin them in.
Fundamentally, more posts means more impressions as well. There will be diminishing returns when you go 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
I think 3 is a good sweet spot.
Right, and you said authoritative, educational,
Authority, aspirational, and then results.
results. Okay, so you got those 3 buckets there. Are you retargeting this list? Because I would assume that that's an amazing source of conversion.
I spend 20 grand a month on meta ads, and that's open targeting. So it will do retargeting to my website visitors. I don't currently run ads to the emails on that list.
Why don't you pipe it in with the API?
I'm getting some free consulting here. Well, yeah, I mean, there's things that we can look to do. Yeah, definitely. But I mean, fundamentally, what we're doing seems to be working. So,
have you tried lookalikes?
No, I haven't tested against that. I really, what I want to do with my advertising is just make it like very, very simple. Like as soon as we start to introduce audience targeting, there then becomes like a ton more variables to test. And I believe broad is the best at the moment for Meta.
Yeah.
So I just leave it broad.
Interesting. Because it's been a while since I've structured those funnels for like those type of businesses, but I've always found like do what you need to do to get core audience, right? Which effectively is a list. Once you have core audience, retarget, maximum conversion, lowest cost per acquisition, and high velocity of clients. And then just switch everything to LLAs because fundamentally, again, it comes to the butterfly effect, right? The people closest in similarity to that will fundamentally convert the highest. I think this is what they're doing anyway.
Broad is doing that anyway.
Broad,
that broad does that.
It's your AI evolution. But I would be very curious to see you try the lookalikes though and the retargeting at low budget and just see the difference between them.
Well, let's open up the ads manager after this podcast.
Yeah, and give it a try. Okay, that's interesting. All right, so I think that fundamentally serves content. Let's talk about ads now, because I've tried to push you to do ads for the longest time, and you're very opposed. And then it would be fair to say ads in the last 3 months have been an enormous accelerator.
It seems to be now where we make all of our money, yes.
Okay.
We do still do well with content, but yeah, I think if you are not running paid advertising for your business, like what are you doing?
Yeah. Well, that wasn't always that clear for you though.
Nope.
So I would be very curious, like, it was maybe like 2-3 months ago, I said, do this with ads, et cetera, et cetera. You were very against it.
Yeah.
Why were you so against it then? And what was the fundamental thing that pushed you into doing it?
Bit of a buzzword here, but just sort of like paradigm, right? Like my beliefs around ads. I just thought ads wouldn't work. Like that was it. I just thought, hey,
where did that come from?
Because my customer is hard to target. Like, who is an e-commerce brand owner? Well, it's an 18-year-old in his mum's bedroom making $5 million a year, but it's also a corporate guy in an office, someone like AG1, right?
Yeah.
These are all my customer. So it's not like I can go into Facebook ads and type in e-commerce brand owner. You can't really do that. But I underestimated the power of broad targeting, and I underestimated the power of Meta, I guess. So, the algorithms are at a point now where your creative is your targeting. So if you make a creative that targets your ICP, which of course comes from the thesis and all the things that we just discussed earlier, knowing your customer, then you'll find them.
Okay. Easier said than done. Mm-hmm. How do you make a creative that targets your ICP?
Giving away all the sauce here, am I?
Yeah, of course.
I run VSL ads. Like, I don't run anything cute.
Explain to someone what a VSL is.
I do not run anything to a free lead magnet. I do not run anything to just my blog. I think your strategy is silly. I do not run any ads to my blog or case studies. Like, I don't do anything cute. I literally do a face to camera creative, and I say, I call out my ICP in the first sentence. I ask them what their core desire is. So I'll give away the source here. We had an ad that booked us 68 high ticket meetings within a month, signed 20 plus clients from it, probably made $100,000 from that one ad. Mm-hmm. And that's just in front end, not even taking into account LTV. So we've made a significant amount of money from that one ad. And I literally sat here, I had the camera, and I said, e-commerce brand owners, do you want a 4x ROAS on cold traffic? Something to that effect. So I literally, in the first second, boom, isolated who my ICP is, which means that my ICP stops crawling, which means my hook rate spikes, which means Facebook is like, oh shit, that's the person we need to be targeting. Yeah. Creative hold rate is there. So Facebook starts to learn. And then retention is increased because then I hook them with the desire, 4x ROAS.
Before you continue, because I'm aware that there might be a lot of non-marketing people. Biz people watching this. So just for clarity, what he's referring to is when he says broad targeting, it's essentially running an ad. And when you run an ad, it asks you what age do you want to target, gender, interests, etc. Broad targeting is essentially ignoring all that and saying, Meta, target everyone. And fundamentally, obviously, to target everyone requires a lot of money. a lot more than your daily budget. So Meta needs to decide, well, who are we going to show it to?
Yep.
And the way that he's describing this works is basically it just takes the best guess. It just says, well, let's show it to random people. My understanding from the way Facebook and all advertising platforms will work on an auction, so do the same thing, right? They basically bucket people into groups, and then they sort of show it to random people in that group, and they measure the response. The metric he was referring to is hook rate. So different platforms, different things. I think YouTube is 5 seconds, Meta is 3 seconds, depends. But basically, in the first 3 seconds, does someone stop and scroll?
Yeah.
Or do they just go straight past it?
And that takes it from an impression to a view.
Correct, right?
Yeah.
So then what they are effectively working at is the temperature of relevance. How much is this relevant to this person or not? It's very weird how all these industries intersect, because in AI, you also get the concept of temperature. That's what these platforms measuring, hot, cold, and there's like sliding scale. Effectively, what Facebook says is, oh, this person has the highest temperature. So then it picked one person out of that bucket. It will now show it to 5 more. And essentially, just like that person. And what it's trying to do is confirm the bias towards that person as a high indicator for temperature. Tracking is relevant here because of conversions. It's sort of the biggest intent driver here. And then what it does is it just goes down that path. Right, it just starts showing ads to that person because it knows that that's who it's working for. So when he says call out in the beginning of creative, it's to basically force the person who resonates with that to stop, and therefore indicate to the algorithm that this is who it should be showing it to.
Correct.
Right?
Yep, 100%.
All right, for clarity, continue. Yes.
Yeah, I'll endeavor to explain what I'm waffling about. I am very deep in the advertising world, so I just assume people know these things. ROAS, also return on ad spend, which is an important metric for my customer. So yeah, basically I have that hook, call the ICP out, call their desired result out. Very, very, very simple. And then I basically proceed to explain my offer. So I basically, there's obviously lots of different points. So that's the hook, right? And then the body is the next part. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I did is I basically filmed 5 different hooks, and I filmed one body. Okay. When I first started the advertising, the body, basically it does a few things. It kind of goes into, okay, what is the offer? And basically I run ads to a setup offer. So instead of running ads to a monthly agency service, I run ads to a setup offer. Why do I do that? Because I know my market, and my market hates agencies. They hate retainers. They hate monthly overhead. They literally just want someone to set things up once. It's a new offer. It's fresh. So it gets a great retention rate. I emphasize the fact that it's a one-time payment. I emphasize what we do, some of the case studies.
So focus on that. I want to touch on that because when we were chatting about launching ads, I think lots of people try and run ads to retainer type service things, which usually don't work.
You can do, but your CAC will just be way higher because it's
CAC is cost for acquisition.
Cost of acquiring a customer.
Yes.
I'm sure they know that one. But yes, so you can run ads to whatever you want. It's literally just a mathematical equation of, okay, well, how much is your cost per call? If you're running a call funnel, this is, which I am, which basically means I'm running ads with the objective of getting a booked call, which my sales team then takes. It's just an equation of, okay, well, how much is your cost per call? What's your close rate? And then what's your CAC? And then based on your CAC, what's your LTV, which is your lifetime value? If that equation makes sense, your CAC to LTV equation, then spend more. If it doesn't, spend less.
Unless you're running negative models.
True.
Which is a completely different business model.
Does not happen in my industry. Really.
Right. I want to backtrack a bit, right? So you said 5 hooks, one body. What did you do with the CTA? One CTA or multiple?
Yeah, well, it's one body, so one CTA.
One body.
Which is learn more, click what the thing. But the interesting thing is, so that 5 hooks and one body basically produces 5 individual video ads, which I then throw into an ad set, broad targeting, $200 a day.
Did you control the cost at creative level, or did you just?
No, it was a ABO, so at the ad set level. You want to be testing multiple different ad sets.
When you say ad set level, was it not one campaign, one ad group, or one ad set?
To start with, yes, but when you produce more creative, which you eventually will because your creative fatigues, then you have more ad groups and you want to be able to control it at the ad group level.
What are you splitting at ad group level? Is it just different buckets?
Just different creatives, yeah.
So for each round that you do, like I know you made new ones recently, so you have, let's talk from
per batch of creative, an ad set.
When you make a new batch, you add a new ad set, ad group.
Correct.
Are you reducing budget on the previous one or simply just?
It depends on performance. So,
okay. But then you are going into that ad group and turning off the entire ad group, or turning off individual creatives?
Turning off individual creatives. I mean, to be fair, you don't even need to do that because Facebook will spend where it wants to spend. So it will just stop spending on the creatives that don't perform because it's automated. So you don't even really need to do that. But I do think, you want to test new batches of creatives and new ad sets. So what it really looks like is you pretty much have one campaign. There's not many different campaigns. There's just one broad campaign, but you just end up having a ton of ad sets.
And each ad group
creatives
effectively represents iteration rounds of creative.
Yes.
and you're just leaving all ad groups on. You're just adding each time.
It depends on performance. We will shut some ad groups off if they don't perform.
Okay. Have you noticed that some creatives dramatically outperform others?
Yes, that was what I was about to get to. So I filmed 5 individual video files, and this is something you need to fundamentally understand about paid ads if you want to succeed with it.
Yeah.
4 of them failed, and 1 of them made us $100,000, maybe more.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a zero-sum game. It's like you will test 10 creatives and 1 of them, or 5 creatives, and 1 of them will work and 4 of them will not. And you just have to keep doing that. And so if you try paid ads and you're like, oh, it's not working, it's like, well, you just haven't found the winner yet. If you have a validated market, you can't say that paid ads don't work. And if you think paid ads don't work, then you need to get the hell out of your market and find one where they do work in, because it's the way to predictably scale. So yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, one just absolutely took off. The others barely got any spend and certainly got no conversions. So,
what do you think made that the outlier?
The hook, I'd say.
No.
The hook, because the body was the same. So it was obviously the hook.
Yeah.
One hook appealed to the market, the others didn't.
And so when you now move to the next iteration, did you just make different variations of that same hook?
So what we're doing next is we're testing 2 different batches. So one batch is 5 new hooks, but the same body, but with a different layout and wearing different things, whatever, because there has to be a small change there. And then the second batch is using those same 5 hooks, but doing a different body. So testing a second body. The first ad set will use the same body as the original ads that performed. Reason being is because I just want to test more. We're spending a level where we need to be testing more. So
that's what I was going to touch on. Is I think the level of how much you want to test is directly correlated with how much you're spending.
Absolutely.
Because if you do not spend enough, you will not test enough, right? Then
and like you can't, if you're just getting started and you don't have $200, $300 a day to spend, then don't run paid ads, because it won't work.
Yeah.
You need to, that's why things like cold email and content exist. It's to get your first 20, 30K a month. And then as soon as you get to that point, which is really the reason I'm not further ahead than I am, is as soon as you get to that point where you have that capital to deploy, spend it. Because it's like, I mean, you don't have to. You could sit there and like run a profitable beach business, but it's like, do you want to make money, or do you not? Like, what do you want to do? And if you want to grow and make serious money, then you need to run paid ads.
Awesome. Well, since we're spilling the beans, we might as well go through all of it. So front end we've touched on.
I did not agree on this, by the way.
Front end we've touched on. Let's now talk about the other side of the coin, right? Which is essentially back end funnel. So you said running to VSL. For people who don't know, that's basically a video sales letter. So it's basically they hit a landing page with the video. Do you do opt-ins, or do you let them
opt-in VSL.
Okay, you capturing
opt-in VSL application. Book a call, by the way. They have to go through an application.
When they land on the page, there is no video.
They land on yes, correct. They land on a page with no video, but just a big headline
and button,
proof of results and button. Click on the button, opt in, VSL, click on the button, application page, fill out the application, book a call. So we have a very high friction funnel.
Yes.
And the reason this is important is because Meta is optimizing for an event, and our event is scheduling a call. So if we have a bunch of idiots and unqualified people scheduling a call, then it goes in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Okay, and on that form, you are capturing name, email, phone number, I assume. Okay, name, email, phone number, then you're taking them to video. Is the video a repetition of what you said in the ad, or is it completely different?
No. So the video ad is obviously short. It's 3 minutes long. The VSL is like 20 minutes long. It goes down the thesis document.
Highly edited or very raw?
Edited, yeah. It can be raw though, depends. But the VSL just breaks down the thesis of the offer, right? We've just spent 20 minutes talking about theses. You should not only write one for your business, but for each of your offers as well. So what the hell is this offer? What are the deliverables? What does it include? And then the fundamental difference about us is that we just say the price. We're selling B2B. If you're in B2C, conceal the price. If you're in B2B, say the price, because do you want to waste your sales team's time or not? Like, serious businesses want to know the price ASAP, or they're not going to book. I can tell you for a fact that if I'm dealing with vendors, the first thing I ask them is like, cool, what's the price? Because if it doesn't make sense, I don't want to waste my time.
Yeah, no,
I
think you're running a very unique offer though that make your funnel work, because you're not running the traditional service side, but the price is dependent on how much scale, etc. Right? You're doing the one-time setup, and then you sort of kick.
But even then, give a range.
Yeah, range. I agree with. Okay, and then application. Does the application route them to Calendly straight away, or do they have to wait for someone to reach out to them?
They can book a call after the application. Yeah.
Right. So application type form, I assume, and then straight to Calendly. Okay. And then you're obviously capturing name, email, phone number. So I assume you have setting happening as well.
Yes, there's setting.
Right. How strong do you think setting is as an influence for the success of the funnel?
Very important.
Would you say without setting, the funnel would break?
No, but I would say with setting our cost per call halves.
Okay.
So no, absolutely not. We can run it without setting, absolutely, but we will be running it double the cost per call.
It's like 100% lift in performance, effectively.
Pretty much 75, 100%. Yeah.
Okay. And then you subscribe to the model of having setters different than closers, right?
I fully believe that. Yeah, I'll fight you to the death on that.
Yeah, I think we disagree on that.
Fully, don't get me started.
Yeah, I think I optimize for full stack people in all things I do. I think,
but I would say my AMs are full stack because they do client. Then it's not like I have the media buyer CSMs.
Yeah, just in the sales world.
Yeah, in the sales world, I actually don't think that's the best idea. Closers should be closing, setters should be setting.
All right, so that's X, LinkedIn, funnel. I guess last couple of things I want to touch on is I didn't do one this year, I probably should, but I usually make like a video and I touch on like some lessons I learned in the previous year. Mm-hmm. So 2024, it's crazy to say that we're already in 2025, but 2024, I think was a big year for both of us in very different ways. If you were to reflect on, and not just the business things, so I think like business things, they come with time. And I think it's just an adaptation of skills and you can shortcut that with consulting or whatever. I also think they're boring. Yeah. So aside from business stuff, right, let's stop talking about funnels and like all this other crap. Let's talk about other things. What were like the biggest things you think you learned last year?
Environment, 100%. Like your environment is so important. I have made so much more money by changing my environment, and it's like literally at a biological level, when you change your environment, your brain like lights up. It literally does, because you're in new territory that is unexplored. So you're on edge. And there's also this kind of famous case study about when all the veterans from the US came back from Vietnam, they were all trying heroin, and then they came back to the US. The change of environment meant that the relapse rate was 10% instead of 90%. So we know that environment changes our behavior probably more than anything. And for me, as soon as I got out of my environment that I was in before, which was basically a very small town in a rural part of the country with nothing going on, no entrepreneurs, no one to look up to. Firstly, I did a bit of traveling, which was extremely beneficial. And then finally, I moved to London, was with you, other entrepreneurs that I've met here. Yeah. And that's been extremely valuable for me. So I would say I've learned that lesson. Like, I will never stay in one place for too long. I mean, even here, we're both leaving, right? We've both outgrown it, I think, very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Did you want to jump in on that, or should I keep going?
No, I agree. I think I learned that lesson not last year, but maybe the year before. But I agree with you.
Yeah. And then I think, like, again, it just comes down to, I think my favorite phrase now, and this is not a new phrase, but like, what do you want, right? What are you optimizing for? What direction are you heading in? Once you've sorted out your environment, then you need to sort out what your actions are. But how do you sort out your actions? Well, you need to know where you're going. So I think I've flip-flopped about this. You flip-flopped about this in your time. And so in my time, I think you're certain now. But for me, it's like, what am I trying to do? Am I trying to live a very high quality of life and build a very profitable business? Or am I trying to build a 10 million a year giant that I might be able to exit from? But I know that will take me the next 5 years.
Yeah.
It's like you have to sit down and just meditate on that for a very long time. And then once you know that, then you set about taking your actions. And I think I've changed my mind on that very drastically in the last few months. And so I'm kind of optimizing for what I want now. And so I'd say, those are the two big lessons that I've learned, I think. Yeah, I'm trying to think, is there anything I've learned about love or relationships or anything like that? Probably.
There's been a few lessons there, I think.
Yeah, in the last few weeks.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. I guess a selfish question that I have is, we're doing this podcast, which I've been supposedly doing for like a long time. Right? It's been a long time coming. And I think, one of the lessons I learned last year is some people are very good at making content and stuff, even if they do not care about it. Like, we spoke about the content funnel and stuff. I've done that over the years. And I think the reason I've never been able to do content consistently is simply because it's always a means to drive business, right? We spoke about the whole playbook for X and LinkedIn and even for ads, right? Fundamentally, you're optimizing for leads and therefore customers. For the first time, I'm recording this podcast and I have absolutely nothing to sell. My personal brand does not at all funnel down into the business that I'm running now. You can maybe make the argument personal brand might even not help the business.
It's probably a very inefficient way to acquire users, yes.
Correct. And I think that is why for the first time I will be consistent with this. But I do recognize the requirement for content if you are running that type of business.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it just always felt exceptionally inauthentic to like cut in between, hey guys, sign up for this, whatever, where you have never had that problem. I think that was a lesson that I learned last year. What do you think gives you the ability to execute on it as a funnel rather than authentic, which I struggle with?
I think it goes back to my personality. I like routine. I like consistency. I like schedule. Like I work a 9 to 5. Like I could work at any time in the day, in any place. I could work 2 hours a day. I could work, from my laptop in Bali, but I'm here in London in an office 9 to 5 every single day, Monday to Friday, because I am that person. I love routine. Do you know what I mean? So I don't like the whole tweeting whenever I feel like it, posting whenever I feel like it. I think that works for some people. I think you produce very authentic content that way, 100%. But I'm someone who likes a schedule, a routine. And to be fair, if you're trying to optimize for cash, which you're not, and I am, then you should certainly do what I'm doing, which is have a content schedule, have a content strategy, because without a strategy, you're planning to fail. So it just comes down to, what are you trying to do with the content, And I think what you're doing is very smart. So, yeah.
Well, on that note, let's end off with, I think, probably the last thing that I want to ask. So you spoke about routine. You spoke a lot about knowing yourself, what you want, etc.
Mm-hmm.
What is George's roadmap for 2025? If you were to come back, as I'm sure we will, a year from now, Jan 2026, what would you have achieved? We're both leaving this apartment I'm leaving on Monday, basically.
I'm leaving on Tuesday.
Yeah. So a year from now, what are some like signpost goals?
Yeah. So I think I'm very different to you in this aspect, because I think you had this kind of year last year, and obviously you're a bit older than me. So you've done this, but I think I want to use this year to experience things. Like I've built a multi-million-dollar business. And so I want to profit off of the hard work that I've put in to do that, and travel a bit, live a little more, explore London more, meet more people, build my network up, continue building my personal brand, documenting the journey more as well, not for any reason other than for me to look back on it. Like one of the things that I think I've done really well is that I've been journaling consistently for probably 2 years, ever since I started my business. So I literally have records from the very first client that I signed of like how it made me feel and all these things.
Do you ever go back and read these?
I do, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'd like to further that, recording, vlogging, documenting the journey. I want to do more of that this year. So yeah, it's a very boring answer, and it will definitely uninspire some people who want to build, $100 million companies, which I think I do eventually. But for now, I want to, experience and enjoy life and profit as well. Profit first, focusing on that rather than just trying to build a big revenue beast. I actually want to focus on profitability. And that's kind of the roadmap for this year. Relocate in central London after a bit of traveling. And
what was the tipping point that made you decide not to travel globally? Because we've sort of changed between I want to travel globally to London.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's sort of like having 6 months of traveling instead of a couple of months. And then
just maybe give everyone context about what the hell you've been thinking the last couple of months.
Well, again, like I keep coming out to this point, but it's like, I think you're right, as you often are about me, which is like, I'm not the kind of person that would love jumping around different countries every single month.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm like, oh, that sounds fun. This is new. But I can tell you're probably right. By like country 3, I'd be like, I want to go home. You know, I've got to find another Airbnb. I've got to rent another car. Like I can't be asked to do this. I just know that that's going to be me. And yeah, I love London as well. I was telling you this the other day. I really get excited in the city. Yeah. A lot of people give it a lot of slack on social media. I do not approve. Dubai is really not all that great. Well, I'm going to go check it out next month, so we'll see. But yeah, so I want to obviously see a couple of places and then find somewhere to really settle down and then build a life here. Because I haven't really done that yet. And you certainly haven't, because you're leaving ASAP and you have only spent 6 months in this place.
Well, you must remember I lived in London before, though.
Yeah, but
much longer
which
time.
looked very different to how it's been this time, though.
Yeah, it's very different.
I want to sign a 12-month lease, build a bit more of a life here this year. So that's my plan.
Amazing. Well, I am excited to do this again a year from now.
Yeah.
And see, because I'm quite curious to see where we end up this year, because we could go down very different paths. I'm, for one, excited this year to at least know exactly what I want to build and finally stick with something for a long time. I think that's been like my biggest problem, at least. I'm very excited. I also think I've found sort of what I'm good at and what I want to do now. It's just taken a lot of iteration to do.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for the year. I also think it's just the best time to be alive. I keep saying this, but genuinely, maybe it's rose-tinted glasses, maybe it's a consequence of like the industry that I'm in, but genuinely, I think it's amazing. So appreciate you being on here. It's been a wild 2.5 years. Changed locations a few times in their business, many emails, but that's all right. I'm very excited to see where we both end up. No doubt, you'll be successful in it. So I'll see you again a year from now.
Thank you for having me on.
Of course.